Hello, and everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Sports Talk. I'm Jeff Sylvia.
And I'm Aaron Bolio.
And we're on to Week 10 in the NFL. We do have some teams that still remain unbeaten. We'll check on those, as well as some key injuries around the league. But first, Aaron, I want to talk about this whole FanDuel thing and what the hell's going on with this.
Well, this week, FanDuel and DraftKings, the two local Boston fantasy one-week sports sites, have been banned in, I'm not sure if it was a state, but I know New York. New York has banned it because of the issues that people have been debating of whether or not it is or is not gambling.
Well, it's an interesting issue to discuss because, to me, it is gambling. I mean, just because it's on the internet and not governed by, any big body, to me, it's still the same thing as playing the old cards at work with your friends and doing all that.
Yeah, it definitely. I can see the argument because, I guess if you want to be technical, it is a game of skill. However, if you're going to talk about the actual effects it has afterwards, it is absolutely basically just like gambling. I mean, people can get addicted to it. People can easily end up betting away their life savings on these sites. So, I mean, if you want to call it gambling or not, that's fine. But you have to accept the fact that the consequences of it are still very much real. And, I'm not even condoning the sites per se because I've played a few weeks on FanDuel and I've learned how easy it is to throw money away. But, I mean, it's the same thing as gambling. It's, it's fine. Just be cautious. Don't be stupid about it. And, make sure you're picking the right people for starters. But
I'd like to jump in.
I think regulation is going to be important for this, and it's going to happen soon.
I mean, in all seriousness, let's just cut the brass tacks here. We are going to have gambling when it comes to football. We've had it since the beginning of time. We used to call it, the cards at the end of the week. One facet or another, people are going to bet on sports. They're going to bet on, basketball, football, all those things that are going on. How do we get around this? How do we make this legal? How do we make this fun? How do we make this separate from gambling so that this doesn't become an issue and people can go online and have fun with this?
That's a good question. I think that maybe you should perhaps have some mandatory minimums to how many games a week you can. Because you can enter as many of these as you want. You can even start leagues with your friends on some of these sites.
And don't they even offer you money to match your initial deposit, if you will, to get you going in it?
They try to, they even do those promo codes to give you, I guess kind of your fix to try to keep you in there.
Yeah. It's kind of like crack. They get you
I would
started.
say maybe $100 is the maximum amount of money that you are allowed to gamble a week, or you could kind of reduce that, or maybe 3 leagues is the maximum amount of leagues that you could enter that week, or at least 3 leagues that cost money are the maximum amount you would be able to enter that week. That would be a good start for those sort of things, but it is difficult, and that's, I think, the thing that makes law so complicated is, the littlest thing can be the difference between it being a loophole or fitting into the description of gambling. So it's going to be interesting, especially when it's online. It's going to be very difficult to regulate it when it's online. But.
Oh, it is. And that's the thing that's part of the world today is that, you look at the FCC and broadcasting like we talk about all the time. There's so many different things that are regulated by the FCC that are just non-issues when you get to be on the interwebs, as they say. And I think this is the same thing. There's got to be a place for this in today's society, because if you look at it, everybody's playing online games. You can bet money on poker. You can go to virtual Vegas on any given day you want. So, why is it fair for that to happen, but not for sports? And I think somehow it's got to fit in. I think the issue right now is that it's so popular. People are spending so much money on it, and it's got a grasp of its fan base in such a deep-rooted way that I think there's genuine concern, as you talked about, for abuse, for gambling abuse. How do you regulate that? I think it's a good idea. It's kind of like, when you're playing any game, you have a number of lives per week or whatever it is, and you gotta wait for it to re-up so you don't get out of control. Maybe that's the way to do it, but I still think it does have a place in today's society.
I definitely don't think it should be banned, but I do understand why New York and some of these other places have banned it because of this loophole that they've been able to exploit, saying this is a game of skill and not gambling.
Sure.
It has been almost impossible for a lot of these places to regulate, so the only option they have left is to outright ban it, and it's really kind of if I was DraftKings or FanDuel, I would just bite the bullet and let some regulation come in, just because I think it's going to hurt them in the long run. You're probably going to be seeing more cities trying to drop the hammer on them if they can't do anything about this. And it's a bad image for them. The longer they drag this out, the more this debate of whether or not it's gambling drags out, the worse of the publicity it's going to get.
Well, you'd think that it has to be consistent among all the states. You can't have New York dropping it and still have Vegas carrying it or Minnesota carrying it. But I will tell you, you talk about game of skill. I'm not completely convinced of that, because I think whoever has the luck of the draw and gets Tom Brady for the week, pretty much all the skills out the window at that point.
Well, the interesting thing is if it's not like the free one the fantasy football that we do on NFL.com. This is a 1 week thing, and every player has a specific cap number given to them. So you have to kind of strategize what players you have, and you can't have a team that's Aaron Rodgers, Julio Jones, Le'Veon Bell's out, but all the best players in the league, because you're going to go over the cap. So you kind of have to strategize which players. But
give me Tom Brady and a bunch of scrubs. I'll spend all the money on him, and I win every time.
Well, with that said, that kind of brings us to this week, actually, in football. There's been a few key injuries, a few controversies, and that's going to bring us this week to a segment we haven't done in a while, since week 2.
I love this segment.
But it was fun. This was Rex Ryan. This one, a lot of drama brewing in this week's edition of Press Coverage.
All right, let's take a look.
But they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
Okay. Take a week off to get
You
ready.
play to win the game.
Here we go, Seth.
Hey, I'm just here so I don't get fined, so y'all can sit here and ask me all the questions y'all want to. I'm going to answer with the same answer, so y'all can shoot if y'all please.
All right, so this week we saw the Vikings take on the Rams. That was the 2 picks, one of the games that we picked differently that you got right and I got wrong. And even though the Vikings won, there was definitely a interesting controversy that brewed out of that after a particularly dirty hit to Teddy Bridgewater occurred. And we're going to see the clip. We're going to see the post-game handshake or lack thereof between Mike Zimmer and Jeff Fisher. And then we're going to see the choice words that Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer had for the St. Louis Rams. So we'll take a look at that. Credit to NFL.com, or NFL's
NFL Films
YouTube channel for this one. It's Fox did the game, but we want to make sure the credit given out to those guys. So here we go.
Cadences have changed since I played, and we have had great defenses. But teams go into a game with 4, 5, 6 different cadences. Which we didn't have that one.
That's one for Joyner where you wonder why.
Yeah.
There was no doubt about it that Bridgewater was going to slide, and Mike Zimmer is hot, and you can't blame him. He is really hot. And you know what? You can't blame him. This is a dirty play. Well, you saw right there Mike Zimmer walking right by Jeff Fisher.
And I do know that there's a history there of their defensive coordinator. I'll leave it at that. I would say if we were out in the street, we probably would have had a fight. We're a disciplined football team. We do things right. That's why we lead that's why we are the least penalized team in the league, because we play by the rules. We continue to play by the rules, and just because other teams don't do it doesn't mean we're going to do it.
No question in my mind, that's a dirty hit. Guy sliding, he almost gets his head taken off. Big problem.
Something I really hate that quarterbacks do is when they know they're going to get hit and slide and try to get the penalty, but that's not what this was.
No, definitely not.
Not at all. But I think Mike Zimmer really laid it on there. Basically, and Jeff Fisher teams have had a history of this, but wants to fight him on the street. But the other thing people might not know is he just briefly said, they have a history of this defensive coordinator. Their defensive coordinator was the defensive coordinator of the Saints during the Bounty Gate scandal. So not very subtle there.
A little history repeating itself. But, I got a problem with this for a couple of reasons. I think, of course, they got the call correct with the defenseless hit, quarterback sliding. But, I'm trying to pinpoint the other game, and I want to say it was Colts-Broncos.
Talib poking the...
Well, I'm talking about... I'm trying to think of when... It might have even been the Bears-Chargers game, but there was a quarterback rolling out of the pocket. He was completely in the grasp of the defender, and they didn't blow the whistle. They let him throw the ball. And to me, you can't have it both ways. You can't protect the quarterback and expect them to slide and not try to get extra yards and then not blow the whistle when they're getting wrapped up by a defender. They're going to want to get their heads taken off that way. You got to have it one way or the other. You can't have it both ways.
That's true, but I hate a lot of the rules focusing on quarterbacks, but this was definitely a dirty hit. But
it's important.
Here's the
It's
question,
important
though.
to have that
Here's the
rule.
question, though. Was it intentional? Because Mike Zimmer seemed to think so. He definitely had no respect for Fisher there, and the bounty gate. We've also, a lot of ex-players are talking about this. I heard Bart Scott say that when they used to play against the Tennessee Titans, when Fisher was coaching there, that the players would be looking out for each other and making sure that they braced themselves and they said they'd be covered. And Rodney Harrison even talked about the dirty hit back in 2006 when Jeff Fisher laughed at his injury after I can't remember which player it was, went right for the legs.
Yep.
So a lot of players are saying, yeah, no, this is common with Jeff Fisher coach teams. Do you think that this was he was instructed to do this?
Instructed, perhaps, but intentional, definitely. There's no doubt that that's an intentional hit. And if the player's going to take the brunt of it and say, hey, I acted on my own, that's probably what you're going to hear. But, when history has a way of its rearing its ugly head over and over again, if it walks like a duck and squawks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Oh, yeah, and you know what? I don't know if he was directly instructed, like, a bounty gate, but coaches instill a mentality on a team, and if there's a mentality on this team that, maybe we should, play a little dirty and see what happens, if their guy's injured, that really only helps us. I can definitely see players trying to go for those kind of hits, but Mike Zimmer definitely thought so.
Well, especially in a key position like quarterback, and all of the rules in today's game are surrounded around protecting the quarterback, and especially in today's age where concussions are now a huge part of the NFL, and protocol for concussions is so strict and regulated now. You got to think that when you're trying to protect the quarterback like this, that any hits like that should be dealt with very, very severely by the league. And of course, by anybody that's involved as far as the team goes, discipline.
All right. Well, let's go into the recap of the rest of the week, and I want to start with another dirty hit that happened that ended up costing a team, and that was Denver getting its first loss of the year to the Colts after Aqib Talib kind of mowing Larry on Dwayne Allen there at the end of the game of that game.
What a douche. And that would never happen on a Bill Belichick team. It goes to show you the kind of player that Talib is, but it even speaks more volumes to a coach like Belichick because he's had a history of doing this his entire career. He's always lived on the edge. He's always been a little bit of a dirty player. And now you see the lack of discipline on that team come through with a guy like Talib who's important to that team. And that is a play, if you're going to take a penalty like that, at least have it be in the heat of battle. This is something that was just a douchebag move thing to do after the play.
And you make a good point, too, because, a lot of times we like to just instill Belichick and Brady just to make, but to be fair, Talib was on this Patriots team, and we never saw him do anything like this until he went to Denver. And I've seen a few times since he's gone to Denver where he's been kind of dirty, kind of more mouthing off, and kind of has a little bit more swagger, which might help him play, but at the same time, he looked bad. But I will give the Colts some credit. They exploited a very good Broncos defense.
Boy, they really did. And Andrew Luck looked like Andrew Luck again. And, they hung in there. That game could have gone either way. That game was back and forth. Denver took a lead, and Indy came back in that game. And for them to come back the way they did against that defense, I think we learned a couple of things about that Denver team. First of all, that team is only going to go as far as that defense carries it. Peyton Manning is obviously not the general in charge that he once was, and you cannot lean on him to win you a game, especially, and we talk about it all the time, and I know you're a huge non-fan of indoor stadiums and dome stadiums. When you get Peyton Manning outside and the average temperature in Denver going forward is going to be low 30-ish, maybe.
Oh, especially when they start, because they're one of the best teams in the league. They're going to be playing the primetime games when the sun is down. And
you kick a little bit of wind up there and a little bit of cold. He does not have the muscle to get that ball through those conditions anymore with the accuracy and finesse that he once did.
Well, I think one of the most unbelievable things about that game was if you watch it on CBS, they kept showing that counter of how close he was to beating Brett Favre's record. And the whole time I'm like, yeah, he's going to beat it in front of his home stadium, and it's going to be one of the coolest moments of the week. 3 yards short.
3 yards short.
3 yards short because he threw the interception. And you know what? I still thought he was going to beat it at the end until Talib poked Dwayne Allen in the eye, and then the Broncos never got the ball back.
You know, say what you want about Peyton Manning, but this is one thing that I absolutely cannot stand about Peyton Manning. And if you look at the contrast, if you will, between a Brady and a Manning, Brady was interviewed this week on local radio about, let's call it the only legitimate pick of the season, because obviously the first one was off of Julian Edelman's hands. This one was a true pick. And his exact words were, I misread the play, I made a bad read, I made a bad throw, I've got to get better. If you look at Peyton Manning being interviewed about that interception, well, you know, I was forced to throw the ball a little bit sooner than I wanted to, and receiver didn't get to the ball like he was supposed to. Always the blame goes in another direction. You never see him take the blame on himself. And you talk about a true leader of a team. He might have done it on the field by his play, but I can't see those words being something of a true leader.
And I'm wondering how much of it might be denial, just because he knows that it's kind of coming to the end, so he doesn't. He's trying to make as few excuses as he can.
Very true. He's been that way his whole career, though.
Other big games this week, though. I think one of the craziest upsets that ended up hurting me in this. Carolina is 2 games ahead of everybody else in the NFC right now, and they are undefeated.
They are for real. They are absolutely for real. And I'll tell you what scares me about this team is the matchup with Cam Newton. Making much better decisions back there at quarterback, not throwing the ball, into coverage like he used to. Being able to make the choice whether to throw the ball away, tuck it and run. But on top of all that, he's an absolute beast. He runs over people, and you're not worried about him getting hurt like RG3.
And a lot of people are saying, because his stats going into the week were very similar to Colin Kaepernick, who just got benched, and people are saying, well, why is Newton not getting benched? Well, because Newton is making the big plays where it counts.
Absolutely.
That's the big difference. He's not making the mistakes in the critical last chance moments that he needs to. He's been winning games at the end. He's been very clutch since this change. And the Packers, their defense looks very questionable, and their offense is now starting. We're now starting to see some damage being done without Jordy Nelson. Mm-hmm. It's caught up to them finally.
Sure. I can absolutely agree with that. And, injuries are going to hurt that team. In this league, you have to have a running game. You absolutely have to have a dominant running game to be able to complement the passing game. But, to go back to Cam Newton for a second, you said it last week, and you said it so well, and you got to agree with this. He used to be a guy that made plays with his legs and accented it with his arm. Now he's a guy that's making plays with his arm and accenting it with his legs. And that makes him that much more dangerous.
He could have easily gone extinct the way of RG3 and Colin Kaepernick and all the other read option guys. But no, he decided to become something different.
And a good leader for this team, too. No doubt about it. Not making mistakes, managing the game well, playing within, his game plan, and not making the stupid mistakes that you saw, that team make in the past and self-destruct. The big question on that team is obviously Steve Smith is gone. Who do you have now?
That's the thing that I think is impressing me the most about Cam Newton right now. Because, as we keep talking about how great of a season Brady's having, we keep talking about how great of a season Rodgers having, and Cam Newton's not having as good of a season as those guys. But I could name pretty much every. I mean, Patriots fan, but I'll look at the Packers. I can name half their receiving core. I can name Rodgers, their tight end. I can name Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb and Jerry Jones. Other than Greg Olsen, I cannot name a single other target that Cam Newton throws to in Carolina.
No, it's not a sexy lineup with a lot of big name receivers for that team at all. It's a perfect mentality of what the Patriots have built on for years, and that's next guy up.
It's next guy, and we're going to be seeing that. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But another game that I want to get into is I picked Oakland to beat Pittsburgh, and they were damn close. And big injury again. Ben Roethlisberger, just as he comes back, leaves again. And I think that's the problem when you're as big as Ben Roethlisberger, is the injuries come a little bit easier for you, despite the fact that the size can help at times. But now they're going to be looking at their rookie quarterback again, who has impressed so far.
Oh, no doubt. I want to talk about the receiving in this game, and forgive me because the name slips me, but 297 yards of receiving.
Brown?
for Antonio Brown.
Antonio Brown, yeah.
Unbelievable. And many thought that might have been a record, but it's not. It's short of a record set, I believe, in 1960 something, 300 and some odd yards receiving. But what an absolute clinic put on by Antonio Brown, and no excuse at all for the Raiders, especially down in that game during clutch time. You know who's getting the ball, you know they're third and long, and they still make the play.
Well, their defense didn't, but Derek Carr made a spectacular throw to tie the game up with like a little time left. I'm still hyped on the Raiders, even though they lost this week. What a comeback by them to keep it in the game. Unfortunately, they fell short at the very end, but they were down 2 scores going into that, and they ended up tying it up.
Well, this is a different Raiders team for sure. And what I see different about this team for, in many years in the past, they would get down, they would get on themselves, then you'd see the self-destruction. The Raiders would stop making stupid penalties, you'd see the frustration in the huddle, you'd see the frustration on the sidelines. Now this team seems to rally around adversity. This team knows how to come back. They know they can come back, and they've won some crucial games already. They've got a decent record, and they're really looking toward a wild card berth in this year's playoffs.
And we keep talking here in New England about Tom Brady reaching the fountain of youth. I think what's even more impressive is Charles Woodson.
Oh, my God.
He's older than Tom Brady and plays a position that gets you hit a lot more and is a lot harder to maintain.
Sure.
He looks like a 20-year-old safety. It's incredible watching him right now.
He is playing at an unbelievable level. And, you talk about a guy that compensates for skills diminishing over time. He doesn't look like he's lost a step at all. As a matter of fact, he looks like he's in better shape than he was 10 years ago. And, is he not leading? If he's not leading the league in interceptions, he's got to be pretty close.
And he's the leader of that Raiders defense that has become very productive, especially with Khalil Mack in his second year.
No doubt about it. A lot of surprises around the league this year, this week. Bengals and Browns was not one of them. The Bengals continue to roll, taking their undefeated record into Cleveland, and that game wasn't even close. What do you think's going on with the Browns? Do you think, quarterback-wise, they can't keep anybody healthy?
As much as I hate Johnny Manziel, I would stick with him. McCown is probably better, but this season is lost, and Manziel's your future. You drafted him number 1, and that's the thing that keeps annoying me about the Browns is they keep drafting quarterbacks number 1, and they go, oh, this guy didn't pan out, bye, and it's like, you're wasting a first-round draft pick on a quarterback.
Right.
At least wait and see if he develops into something, or try to, first-round draft picks are humongous commodities, especially when you're the Browns and they're that low on the draft board.
Sure.
Annually. So you would want to keep a guy like that, or at least see if he can become something.
Well, I think teams are running scared with that position nowadays, and we talked about it on last week's show. The way the quarterback is coming out of college and the game that they're playing in college with the quarterback, with all of the option plays and the tuck and run plays that you see the quarterback using their legs a lot more. The pocket passer in the NFL game is much, much different. And if you look at just the linebacking core of let's call it the worst linebacking core in the NFL, is still going to be a whole lot faster, a whole lot meaner, and hit you a whole lot harder than the best linebacking core that you would find in college. So to me, it's a whole different game. Absolutely a different game when it comes to quarterback, and I think the teams, may be second guessing themselves in that position because it's not a trump card anymore. It's not a slam dunk anymore to pick up a number 1 for quarterback and have him develop in a few years. It's a much different game at this level, as we're finding out.
Yeah, we're going to start seeing quarterbacks get drafted from teams that are from college that probably aren't making the top 25, probably no-name colleges, just because, I think a lot of the colleges that are successful right now with their programs are not running NFL-style offenses. And so I think scouts are going to have to be looking at some different places to try and find what they're looking for. But, if you want to be a college that's going to develop talented players for the future, I would try and go for a more NFL-style offense. It would probably help your players and maybe even help you as a college team later on in your life. But
well, if you want to be a quarterback and you're going to go to college, how do you prepare for the NFL? If your dream is to make the NFL, Are you going to want to go to a team like Alabama that runs, almost exclusively, or Arkansas that runs the ball exclusively? Or are you going to want to go to a team, that mixes it up and passes? But they're few and far between out there. Now you even have teams that have multiple quarterbacks come in.
It's really hard. Like, if you got a scholarship to Alabama and then you got a scholarship to West Alabama, it'd be really hard to, deny the Alabama scholarship.
Especially when you're going to be at least in the top 5 every year.
Yeah. So other games this weekend, we talked a little bit about that Minnesota-St. Louis game with a hit, but St. Louis is now tied with Minnesota is now tied with Green Bay at 6-2.
And beat a very good Rams
atop
team.
the NFC North.
Yep.
This Vikings team is for real. They're going to be playing Green Bay in a few weeks. It's going to be an interesting matchup when that comes around.
Well, Green Bay, to me, is surprising a little bit because they're not able to finish. And this is where we thought that they would be the juggernaut of the NFC, if you will, is to be able to just roll over teams and finish games. And we've seen now, against 2 what I would call legitimate teams, they weren't able to put them away, and they weren't able to score enough points. Now, if you look at the Vikings still have Adrian Peterson, and if you have a running back that can control the ball and get you first downs and control the clock, that's where I think the difference comes in at the end of that game, where you're trading off touchdowns, you're trading off points, and you gotta get that last drive, you gotta get that last first down. I like my chances putting the ball in the hands of Adrian Peterson.
Underrated defense. Big shocker this week. I'm going to go to the other big shocker this week would be Atlanta losing to Blaine Gabbert and the 49ers. Atlanta has dropped 3 of the last 4 games, and the one win they had was a squeaker against Mettenberg and the Titans. It's not been a very pretty look for the Atlanta Falcons.
No, and that's a surprise to me because coming out of the gate, that high-powered offense with Matty Ice back there, looked almost as unstoppable as you can be, and especially in that division, you would expect them to do well. But boy, they've really they've taken a big dump down their leg in the last few weeks, and they don't look like a team to me that's going to be taken seriously, down the stretch or even into the playoffs.
All right. Bills finally got Tyrod Taylor back after their bye week, after their trip to London, and he looked like he didn't miss a step as the Bills blew out the Miami Dolphins. Looks like the Miami Dolphins' change of regime to Dan Campbell is not panning out the way they hoped it would.
Well, unfortunately, for them, they started out with a little bit of emotion, but now reality is setting in, and they have to play in the toughest division in football, that be at the AFC East. The Bills, any given week can be a good team defensively. They're a Rex Ryan coach team, so you don't expect consistency out of them. But, given the opportunity, they can light it up like that. And as you said, Tyrod Taylor coming back off of his injury, that's going to make a big deal for that team going down the stretch.
I do want to protest. This is not the toughest division. I stand by the NFC West being the toughest with Seattle, Arizona, and St. Louis. I think we have maybe better than other divisions in some years, but I don't put it as one of the best ones.
All right, well, we can agree to disagree there. I still think we got the Pats, Jets, and until the Dolphins started to take a big crap, they looked like they were going to be a pretty decent team this year, too. So what are the surprises we got this week?
We had the Titans beating New Orleans in overtime.
Oh, yeah.
After Drew Brees completely lit it up against the Giants, he comes back and has kind of a an average game, but the Saints' defense really collapsed, and I'm starting to think that Mariota's legit. He's, even though the Titans haven't been playing well, he has, and it looks like he's kind of trying to get away from that Oregon read option style offense that we were talking about earlier, and kind of trying to integrate himself into an NFL style offense.
Well, we're going to see this a lot with developing quarterbacks, and into their second and third and fourth year, this is where we're going to see whether they're going to make it in this league or not. And the difference is going to be, can you come back? Can you make a drive at the end of the game that's going to be sustainable to get the first downs and run out the clock? Can you finish games is really going to be the key. And, I was surprised. I thought the Saints would roll all over the Titans, especially after the points they're putting up were like, okay, they're playing fast again. Drew Brees is, whatever ailments might have been bothering him a couple of weeks back certainly aren't showing themselves. He's throwing the ball extremely well. And as you said, 7 touchdowns the week before. How could they not beat up on the Titans? Is just a shock to me.
And that's why Carolina must be happy because they're gaining even more ground in their division.
Things are going right for them. Like all the cosmos are lining up for Carolina right now.
We're starting to get a little pressed for time, so I think we should integrate now to the Patriots-Redskins, and then we can kind of get into some of the stuff that happened and talk a little bit about next week before we go to the break.
Okay.
So game went pretty much as everybody expected. Pretty one-sided affair, but some concerning incidences. Julian Edelman had that fumble early in the game. Brady threw the worst pass he threw all year. And, I mean, we can make excuses all we want for the one against the Colts because Edelman bopped it up to him, and Edelman only bopped it because of the finger. But that was a horrible throw.
It was a horrible throw. And, taking full credit for that in the interview was, again, something that I think sets Tom Brady apart. He stands right up and says, he's joking, laughs. He says, yep, terrible read, terrible throw. And that's the one I lost sleep over. So I like a guy like that.
Yeah,
I'll take him every time.
And he showed how mad he was when he made the tackle and tried to prevent the touchdown. Although, as I've said before, he's 38, so I
don't want to see too many of those.
I cringed when he did that. I went, okay, he's good. He's safe. He didn't hurt himself. Good play, Brady.
And we talk about them facing adversity. Maybe not a bad thing that the defense was able to bail them out on that drive and didn't give up any points as a result of that interception. I think that's a good thing to take away from that game. Unfortunately, what's not a good thing to take away from that game is the injury to Dion Lewis.
That was critical. I mean, when I watched it, I didn't see anything. I thought he was honestly going to be okay because usually when you see those ACL, MCL injuries, they're on the field for a good 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They're in a lot of pain. They have to get carted off. Lewis walked off on his own power, but they discovered that it was, in fact, an ACL. And that means he's out for the year, which is very sad because he was a critical part of this. And now next man up, as we discussed, I'm not sure if they can get a next man up who is going to be as good. That's, I think, the big problem.
Antoine Boland's going to be the next guy up, and he's had flashes of that. He can run the football. He's quick out of the backfield, and to me, it's got to be a third down guy that, we had Shane Vereen, we had Kevin Falk. We've always had that third down guy for Tom Brady to slip out of the backfield as that fourth receiver, if you will. When Amendola's covered and Gronk's covered and Edelman's covered, you still have that fourth option. I don't know if that option completely disappears or can somebody step up and take that role?
See, you say Brandon Bolden. I'm going to say, even though Brandon Bolden was the one they put in his place that weekend, I'm going to say James White. It looks like they've already been leaning that way.
Could be.
And I've been seeing rumors that they're thinking about picking up Pierre Thomas, and they've been interviewing some other ex-running backs to see what they can fill that role. But it definitely is a big position to be filled, especially because, when the offensive line is getting as beat up as this one is, it's really good to have that back to dump it off to in case of emergency. And Lewis was so good at finding holes, and his quickness was so crucial that, even if White does decent, it's still not going to be as good as Lewis.
Well, that brings up a major concern. I'm glad you touched upon it. And there are very few people talking about how depleted this offensive line now is. If you look at the injuries that they have suffered in the offensive line, we should be wondering if we're going to win any games at all. But it just seems that the next guy up takes the role, business as usual. They even have guys that haven't played the position before that are doing an exceptional job of protecting Tom Brady.
Yeah, I was actually correct when I said they were going to move Stork. They would have both Stork and was it Jackson? I can't even remember the center's name anymore, the new guy. But no, they had both of them out there, and they had Stork as a guard. And it's just kind of rearranging it and see what works. But what's saving them huge this year is the fact that Brady's been able to get the ball out in under 3 seconds. It's just been, the line is weak, but Brady's been able to release. The thing that concerns me is when we start playing teams that have much better secondaries. Even though Brady's getting more mobile, if the coverage is there, the line's going to start breaking down, and we're going to start seeing some sacks or some plays getting broken up.
Well, that's the part that concerns me is when that protection breaks down and Brady takes a couple of hits, and then they're looking at third and long. The New England Patriots have an unbelievable record on third down. I want to say it's in the high 40% of converting on fourth down, which is just amazing in this league. That's because they're managing that third down situation to be in a place where it's 6 yards or under. You start taking some sacks, you start dropping back a little bit longer and holding the ball a little bit longer than you have to because of coverage, that whole game changes. Now you're looking at 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. The play selection's different. It could look like a whole different team out there in a hurry.
I would not blitz this team, despite the fact that the offensive line is a lot weaker. Just I would want to have more guys back in coverage, just because if you can try and buy time, you will manage to get those plays. I think a 3-man rush should be able to get through that offensive line if there is enough time for them. And Brady's mobility can only get him so far. He's definitely no Cam Newton or Aaron Rodgers. He definitely, if you're expecting him to run 10 yards for first down consistently, if it has to come to that, probably not going to happen. But they do have a big matchup this week with the New York Giants.
Boy, and that is going to be a big matchup because, and we talk about the records. Everybody likes to talk about how, Brady owns the Bills and Brady owns the Jets and Belichick and Brady, their record along the way. But if you look at how they've matched up against the Giants, 0 for 3 the last 3 meetings and 1 for 5 in the last 5 meetings. If there is a coach out there that isn't under the spell of Bill Belichick and just decides that he has to do something so insane to try to win a ball game against this team, it's Tom Coughlin and the New York Giants.
And Bill Belichick is a branch of the Bill Parcells coaching tree, and I've seen it actually historically. He hasn't been at his best against other Bill Parcells coaches.
Good point.
Sean Payton, even Tony Sparano, if you believe that. Tony freaking Sparano, who had that horrible trip with the Dolphins, managed to get a few on you.
Yeah,
and
in a big way.
Tom
When they won big.
Obviously has managed to get the better of Bill, and that's what makes me nervous. It's like no matter who's there, as long as Coughlin and Eli Manning are there, it's unbelievable what they do to this team. And we talked a little bit about it the week 1 when we saw that whole timeout fiasco with them in Dallas, and we're thinking how this team is gigantic clowns against everybody but the best team in the league. That is unbelievable to me. But this team always makes me nervous. Although this year they've looked better on offense and worse on defense. They have a new offensive coordinator. It took them some time, but now they have a top 5 scoring offense, which I didn't realize. Patriots actually have a top 5 scoring defense, so that's going to be a key area. But I'm really curious to see if Eli can exploit it like he has in the past. However, what the Giants do not have, although Jason Pierre-Paul is back for them, is a pass rush. Ironically, we've had years when they've had Osi Umenyiora and Justin Tuck and Michael Strahan. This year they don't have that, so we're going to see how well that works out for them.
Well, it is interesting that you mentioned the new offense, and it is the 3rd year now, I believe, for Eli Manning in this offense. And specifically what they're doing is they're changing his foot setting in the pocket and standing back in the pistol now, leaning with the opposite foot, is allowing him to do something very New England-esque, and that's getting the ball out very quickly. And you see that being the future of offenses, especially pass-driven offenses in the NFL, is to get the ball out quickly. Nobody does it quite as good as Eli Manning in that division, and certainly can keep up with anybody in the league.
Something I definitely would do, because Odell Beckham Jr. is having a career year. He's showing, I think, Odell Beckham Jr., after that spectacular one-handed catch last year,
nature, isn't
he's
he?
trying to prove that he was more than just that catch, and he has been. And what I would do, I would definitely not have Malcolm Butler one-on-one. I want the safety help over. That's who I want the safety on, because what I've noticed about Butler is he'll do tight coverage, but sometimes he doesn't make the play once the ball gets there. Beckham, on the other hand, could make a catch pretty much anywhere around his body where he has to. I would not like that matchup. I want help over the center to make sure, help from the safeties to make sure that he does not make those kind of plays.
Sure. When you got a sure-handed guy like that, you're going to need McCourty helping out over there. And it's a lot like Brady talks about Gronkowski. He extends the area where he can catch the football around his body, and Beckham does that extremely well. There's very few people in the league that I have ever seen in my history of watching football that has better hands than Beckham.
This is one of the few teams that has made me nervous this season. I mean, I didn't feel too bad about them at the beginning of the year, but as they have improved and the history, I'm a little nervous. And speaking of the history, it's just about time for the break,
All right.
which brings us to the Super Bowl rematches. And I'll be honest, this is the most.
This one hurts.
This one hurt.
This one
But
really
I made a
hurts.
promise. I've made a promise to you and the folks at home and to myself that I was going to do every single one of these rematches, and that I will remove my biases whenever possible. So I've had to do this. I've done this basically like it was just another one of these, and it stung every minute. And, you know, it's not just that. There was also the Minnesota-Oakland, which is also another Super Bowl rematch, which any Patriots fans who were alive then, I don't, but I wasn't, but I know the story of the divisional round game of 1976. Yeah, so that also might be a memory you might get from this, but consider it a pump-up video. But
Is the therapy helping?
the therapy might help.
Okay.
Well, in a few weeks they'll play the Eagles, and I'll get to do Super Bowl 39. So
There you go.
So enjoy the break, and we'll be right back.
Let's take a look.
The National Football League is going gold for its 2015 season. This is to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the largest game in American sports, the Super Bowl. Coincidentally, there will be 19 Super Bowl rematches throughout the 2015 regular season. We here at LATV and at Sports Talk wish to celebrate the Super Bowl's epic milestone. So, each week, if there is a Super Bowl rematch happening that weekend, we will give you a quick 1-minute recap of that game in all its glory.
This week is a rematch of Super Bowl 11 between the Vikings and the Raiders. The Minnesota Vikings lost 3 prior Super Bowls, while the Oakland Raiders lost several prior AFC Championship games. Both were determined to erase the demons of their past. John Madden's Oakland Raiders won the Super Bowl the only way they knew how, with a smash-mouth game plan of great running and a dominant physical defensive stand. The Raiders managed to blow out the Vikings 32-14 to win Super Bowl 11. Next is a rematch of Super Bowls 42 and 46 as Tom Brady and the Patriots take on Eli Manning and the New York Giants. The new millennium was defined by the rivalry between Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. But in Super Bowl 42, the rivalry took on a new twist when Brady tried to lead the Patriots to an undefeated season against Peyton's younger brother Eli Manning. The Giants' defense, led by Michael Strahan, dominated the best offense in the league and held the Patriots to only 14 points. But it was the Giants' offense that won them the game, when Plexico Burress made a spectacular helmet catch to set up a Plexico Burress touchdown in the final minute to allow the Giants to win and spoil the undefeated season. 4 years later, they'd meet again in Super Bowl 46, this time with Justin Tuck leading the dominant Giants defense over the Patriots. Mistakes by the Patriots cost them when Wes Welker dropped a critical fourth-quarter pass. History repeated itself when Mario Manningham made a spectacular sideline catch that set up a last-minute touchdown by Ahmad Bradshaw to give the Giants the lead and won them their 4th Super Bowl in franchise history.
Ouch. That one still hurts.
Trip down memory
It
lane.
still hurts.
there.
I want to remind everybody that after that non-catch by Wes Welker, Giselle went on national television and defended her husband, who could only throw the ball. Somebody has to catch it.
Wes Welker actually just signed with the Rams this week. I don't like that just because his concussion history is such a problem, and I really, really would hate to see the guy, end up in a wheelchair, with a Stephen Hawking's computer just because of how all the concussions he's got. But he has been a Super Bowl jinx. He's teams with him in the Super Bowl 0-3.
I don't like Wes Welker coming back into the league. As you mentioned, too many concussions. There's got to be something in place to protect guys like that, and not let them get their eggs scrambled too many times, because now he puts a lot of things at risk. He's a proven player. I don't know why he just doesn't ride off into the sunset. I don't like the move for Wes Welker.
It's not worth it.
Not at all.
But if you want to talk about, this has been such a painful week. I lost in fantasy. I had to make that recap, and Also, this week's picks, I got completely hammered.
The first time I think I gained a little ground. Even though it wasn't a good week for either one of us, I went 6-7, you went 4-9, so I picked up a couple of games on you.
So both records that you could win the AFC South with.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be in first place and probably looking at MVP if I was in that division.
Well, yeah, 4-9. I mean, week two, I thought was bad. This was bad. There were some upsets this week.
Boy, you're not kidding. Now, if we look at the overall standings of the year, I'm again.
I feel a little better about myself when we
right on your heels. I'm right on your heels. I'm only 3 behind, so anything could happen. There's still a lot of football left here.
Well, I looked at the standings prior because I was before that I was 73-40 going into the week. I was thinking, I could go over 80 and still be pretty much under 50. But,
yeah.
Looks a lot uglier.
Still
now.
a good winning percentage, though. They're still well over 500, so we're doing better than most NHL teams anyway.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look around Week 10 and the picks for this week. And where do you want to start?
Let's start with New Orleans at Washington. Bad weeks for both of those teams. Who do you like?
Bad weeks for both of those teams. I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints. I think they bounce back. Drew Brees, still too much, with that offense. They play fast. I think they always match up well in Washington, and I like the Saints.
That's where I'm going to go. It's so hard to pick Washington, despite the fact that the Saints have been inconsistent. It's so hard to pick the Redskins. But next week, I'm going to go Green Bay over Detroit. Detroit comes back for their bye week and goes at Lambeau to play Green Bay. It's going to be just what the doctor ordered. A home game against the Detroit Lions, just what Green Bay wants right now.
Sure, and I think Green Bay is going to play with a little bit of intensity as well as desperation, and I'm sure you've already circled my pick in there without even me mentioning the Green Bay Packers.
Dallas at Tampa Bay. Tony Romo recovering, still not going to be in for this one.
Still not in for this one. I still like the Cowboys, even though the Bucs, I think, are running the football very well. Although it's in Tampa, boy, it's going to be a tough contest there. I'm still going to go Cowboys because I think if they don't win this game, their season is over. They're so close to getting their leader and their quarterback back. I think they pull this one out and still give a little bit of life to their season.
I actually thought you were going to pick Tampa, but I was also going to go Dallas just because despite the criticism of the backup quarterbacks, they have been in the games the last few weeks.
And scoring points.
So, now they're going to be playing a pretty bad team in Tampa Bay. This is their opportunity to try to get back into things, especially when their division is weak. They're still alive, oddly enough.
Well, maybe, if we want to address the Greg Hardy situation while we're at this game, is he helping this team at all?
No. Not at all.
Not at all.
I mean, yeah, he's a spectacular player, but I think the locker room is getting a little cramped up and, arguing with coaches, and it's just not a good look for this team either.
And is he a spectacular player? He might be a spectacular player, but he's not playing at that level now, and the team is 0-4 since his return?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they haven't won a game since Romo left, so I don't think Hardy has been much of the problem, but he's definitely made the Cowboys look even worse in the headlines. I mean, this week, despicable act, changing his bio on Twitter to guilty till proven innocent. Hey, Hardy, guess what? You're not Ray Lewis where you were found not guilty. You weren't O.J. Simpson where you were found not guilty. You went to court and you were found guilty. This isn't up for debate. You did this.
Yeah. And I don't know, man. It's a despicable is a perfect word to use. And you and I talk about it all the time. Any city with any NFL franchise, these players are being paid millions and millions of dollars. They have a responsibility to their team and their communities to behave in a way that is so opposite of what Greg Hardy is doing right now. I don't know how Jerry Jones can stand behind this clown any longer than he already has.
I think he's maybe trying to make up for obviously he made the wrong decision. Maybe he's trying to make up for it. Maybe he's even in denial himself about this. But, I mean,
bad move.
It would be one thing if you did what Hardy did and you were incredibly remorseful, tried telling me this whole thing about how you were in a dark place then. Maybe I won't believe you, but the effort's there.
Sure.
Greg Hardy doesn't seem to have the concept of what he did was wrong in any way. It's just...
That's the problem I have with these guys, the holier-than-thou attitude. And you know, if I did something like that or you did something like that, you know, we'd be pleading for our life and paying lawyer fees and trying to stay out of jail. And here you have a guy that feels entitled just because he's an NFL player, thinks he can walk on water. It's disgusting. It's despicable.
By the way, before we end this and go back to the picks, one guy named Greg Hardy not being pursued by the NFL. Later on in February, we're going to be seeing more Deflategate.
You think so?
Well, they said that the appeals hearing is going to be then, so they're continuing to pursue Tom Brady. They don't really seem to care about Greg Hardy.
Let's paint a picture. Let's say that they actually get back into court and they get an appeal on Deflategate. And at the time, the Patriots, let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they've lost a game. Maybe they're 13-1 or 14-1 at the time, or maybe they've already won the Super Bowl by the time this thing already happens. What judge in the world is going to look at the NFL and say, he threw 2 picks all year, he set an all-time NFL record with properly inflated footballs. Where's your case? How can you stand on this?
It's a waste of time. It's
an
such a waste of time for them.
Waste of time and money.
Anyway, Carolina at Tennessee. I think I know who you're going to pick. I think you know who I'm going to pick.
Yep, I'm definitely going Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers. Remain unbeaten. Easy win for them in Tennessee as well.
Chicago at St. Louis.
I'm going to go with the St. Louis Rams. They lost last week. Chicago won last week. I don't think that Chicago is a good enough road team to go into St. Louis and beat that team. I'm going Rams.
I'm going to go a little different. I'm going to go Chicago. They have kind of shocked me in the past few weeks, to be honest. I mean, they're not playing at an elite level, but they're playing better. And I think their defense can be good enough to stop Nick Foles and maybe not slow down Todd Gurley, but I think Chicago has a pretty good chance in this one.
Gurley's running his ass off.
Miami at Philadelphia.
I'm going to go Eagles all the way on that one. Miami's going in the wrong direction. Philly has got to get it together, and it's time to kick that next level down in Philadelphia. Coming off of a big win from Dallas, I think they
I agree with you on that. I think Philadelphia is proving that they're going in the right direction. Miami, opposite. Jacksonville at Baltimore.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, both of those teams I would have given up on a couple of weeks ago. You know, Jacksonville is putting up points, although they're not winning a lot of games. The Ravens are surprising the hell out of me with absolutely no weapons and nothing to work with. The game is in Baltimore. For that reason alone, I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens.
I am going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Baltimore, to me, had kind of a fluky win against Pittsburgh, and their other win against the Chargers really went down to the Chargers choking in the end. I do think Jacksonville is better than their record says. I mean, they're not great by any means, but they definitely have a lot of young talent. I think
Bortles is doing a good job.
Bortles has more weapons than Flacco does right now. I'm going to go Jacksonville.
All right.
Cleveland at Pittsburgh.
Boy, with the injuries, that's a tough one to pick. You know, at Pittsburgh, I'm still going to take the Steelers. I think the Steelers are still in the thick of it. You know, Coach Tomlin there, I think, does an amazing job, just like Belichick does with next guy up. And if you remember, every time the Big Ben or the quarterback's been hurt, whether it's been Charlie Batch or Michael Vick or whoever it is they plug in there, they still find a way to win. And I still like the Steelers at home.
I'm going with the Steelers. I like their young quarterback, and I like their receiving core. Tough one, this one. Minnesota at Oakland.
Minnesota at Oakland. Wow, that is a tough game. I should let you pick this one first, but I'm going to take the Oakland Raiders. For the reason that they're playing at home. Derek Carr is having just an unbelievable run right now, and I think he is starting to really get that offense clicking. If they can stop Adrian Peterson, or at least hold Adrian Peterson to not a spectacular game, I think they score enough points to win at the end.
I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. They have impressed me. I mean, I love the Raiders this year. The Vikings have impressed me even more this year.
The defense is playing
Their
good.
defense is playing great. Teddy Bridgewater is going to be in for this game, despite the dirty hit, so I like the Vikings in this one.
Now, how bad was the injury to him? I mean,
it was a concussion.
His eggs got scrambled pretty good?
It was just a concussion, but it kind of, some concussions, the severity matters, but it looks like he's going to be in this one, so I mean, I don't think it should affect his play by any means.
Okay.
Kansas City at Denver. When they last played, it was Jamal Charles who ruined the game. There will be no Jamal Charles in this one, and there won't be Aqib Talib either because he was suspended after his poking of the eye at Dwayne Allen. So, who do you like in this one?
I like the Broncos at home. I don't think the Chiefs have enough weapons, and that Broncos defense, even without Talib, I think is enough to slow the Chiefs down.
There has not been enough for Denver. Just simply, I mean, not for Denver, for Kansas City. They've had a terrible year so far, despite the blowout in London. They basically beat the only team worse than them. So, even with Talib out, there's just the defense is still too good for Kansas City.
Absolutely.
Arizona at Seattle. This could be humongous for determining who's going to win that division.
No kidding. You talk about a game with playoff implications at this one right here. Arizona going into Seattle in that defense.
And a reminder, Carson Palmer and the Cardinals are one of the only teams to go into that stadium and beat the 12th man there.
As they will this week. I'm going with the Arizona Cardinals on the road. I know you're trying to talk me into this pick. I had my mind made up anyway before you did. I like the Arizona Cardinals in this game. I think they can score enough points against that defense, and I don't think Seattle's offense is clicking on enough cylinders to put up enough points. And the thing I liked about the Cardinals last week is even though they didn't play mistake-free football, they found a way to overcome those mistakes and still put enough points up on the board to win.
Seattle coming off of a bye week. Arizona has had some fair share of inconsistencies as well at home. I'm going to go Seahawks.
All right. Interesting matchup there.
Monday Night Football, Texans at Bengals.
I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals. Pretty much going to run the table here, I think. They have a pretty good schedule going forward, and until playoff time comes, it's tough not to pick the Bengals. Playing much better, not giving away games like they used to. I still think they're going to be terrible when the playoffs come, but in this game, I like Cincinnati.
And finally, this is the tough choice, New England and the Giants.
I'm going to let you pick this one first. Because I'm still on the fence. I'm telling you, as of right now, I have not made up my mind.
Just the more we talk about how the Giants have had this team's number, the more I want to pick them, but I'm going to say the Patriots will continue and go 9-0 this week. I'm not doubting the Giants, and I think the Giants are going to make a game out of this. But without the pass rush that they had in those years that kept screwing them up, it's going to be a different feel to this one.
I'm trying really, really hard not to bet with my heart and to bet with my head on this one because, if I'm betting with my heart, the Patriots should win this game hands down. They've got, I think, the means to, again, run the table. If they can get by this game, I think this is one of the tougher games on the schedule besides the Denver game coming up later in the year that I'm worried about. But I'll tell you, if you look at the numbers and you look at the matchups and you look at how these teams have faced off against each other, you can throw all of that crap out the window because when these two teams meet, anything can happen. Tough pick, but I'm still going to pick the New England Patriots. That was
just to be safe, just not that we don't get any mean tweets or anything like that.
Then I want to make sure. It's tough though. I mean, if there was any game that I would go for the upset this week, it would be this one.
Well, I'll tell you what. If Peyton Manning
makes me nervous,
if Peyton Manning gets better somehow between now and the Denver game, I might pick Denver in that one. But that's going to be a tough, bit of a stretch on that one. But
I don't know. But
we'll get to that when we get to that.
This one makes me nervous. So batten down your hatches and buckle it up for this, folks, because we've got one hell of a game coming up on Sunday as well as the rest of the NFL. It is time to wrap. We're coming toward the end of the show. But before we do, I wanted to make a quick statement, as we talked about before, when it comes to paid patriotism. And Cam Neely from the Boston Bruins was interviewed today and is quoted in saying that the general managers in the NHL are going to find a way to more or less get around this and donate it for free. He doesn't think that the teams have gotten a fair rap because they were approached by the Defense Department, much like a budgeted thing that they wanted to sell for advertising. So it's kind of taken a little bit of a twist in the media. But I will tell you that I hope more teams follow suit because there is no place in America for paid patriotism. It should be something that is automatic as the game itself.
Exactly. I mean, just especially with Veterans Day earlier this week, definitely shows that this should be something that comes from the heart, not from the wallet. So good for the Bruins. I hope other teams do follow suit, not just in the NHL, but in all other leagues.
I think they will. On behalf of my co-host Aaron Bolio and the rest of the crew here, we want to thank you for watching Sports Talk. We'll see you next week.